Rings of Power Episode 6, called Udûn, had a little bit of everything. Mostly the plot moved forward, so that's a good thing. As always, before we get started, I just want to say this will be a video filled with spoilers and some conjecture. So please give the episode a watch before you watch this. And I gotta say, I think this one's worth it. This episode focused solely on the Southlands, particularly the Battle of Ostirith, I guess. So no dwarves or hobbits, Harfoots, whatever, in this episode. Before the battle, we get a couple of speeches. One from Adar to the orcs, calling them his children and referring to, them, I guess, to each other as brothers and sisters, which is certainly an interesting point of view that's different than what we've really experienced. I'm not sure if they're trying to humanize the orcs more here or what, but I thought it was pretty interesting. And then Arondir does the same sort of thing to the people of the Southlands, and while effective, it's immediately kind of, I wouldn't say ruined, but a little bit of the weird lighting changes that I don't like. I really liked how the battle played out. I mean, there were a couple of different twists, from both, I guess, both sides. I thought it was pretty smartly done. I like the fact that it's not easy. Our heroes go through some trouble and they actually have to sort of save each other, which I really like to see that. So we've got Bronwyn injured with an arrow. They remove the arrow in a very effective scene. Then Adar shows up, starts killing some of the survivors, and Theo ends up handing the hilt over to Adar, which was kind of an interesting thing. I mean, kind of saw it coming, but yeah. Then the new Minorians show up, and yeah, the battle, I guess, continues, and Adar tells Waldreg that he has a task for him. So Adar runs off, thinking that he holds the hilt, and Halbrand catches him and almost kills him. And Adar is saying, "I don't recognize you," and things like that, because Halbrand is like, "It's like, do you remember you know who I am," and all that kind of stuff. Kind of interesting. In this scene where Galadriel questions Adar, I really love all of the interesting, I guess you could say, additions to the lore, really. I mean, again, if you can look at this as sort of like a fan fiction, but in a good way, not with that negative connotation. If you can look at it that way, it's kind of interesting that Adar is one of basically the original orcs. Galadriel calls him Moriandor, the Sons of the Dark, the first orcs. And then he says, we prefer Uruk, which is kind of cool. I like all that. And then he goes on to say that he killed Sauron. Now, Galadriel and Halbrand have this conversation. There's a couple of different ways to take it. Some people are saying, is this a romance brewing between the two? I looked at it more like fellow soldiers sort of, talking about what it's like to be in war, and that, being by each other's side means a lot to them, and all that. I can see how it could go either way. I'm not calling this right now, but I feel like it could go either way. I feel like it's more of it's the same reason why, like Frodo and Sam, some people say that they're romantically involved, and I just don't buy that. I think that Frodo and Sam they're like brothers, and going through what they went through gives them a deeper relationship and a deeper feeling than just being friends and being friendly. They're like brothers. They're related in this adventure. So it's that's how I look at it. But I mean, look, it could go either way. So as the survivors of the Southlands proclaim Halbrand as the king, and Waldreg takes the hilt that, like I said, the little switcheroo, takes the hilt and opens the gate at Ostirith, I guess a water gate, and floods the Southlands, and it lights Mount Doom. Wow. So a lot happened. I mean, this is a big episode. It's the biggest episode of Rings of Power so far. So much went down, and I gotta say, I was entertained. I was entertained, and it got me thinking. So that's a good thing. But let's talk about the dislikes first. Again, I think my biggest issue is those, in between scenes, the same scene, but different shots and takes and things. And it's like the lighting changes, and it just completely takes me out of it, because I'm like, wait, is this a different scene? What's going on? And then it goes back, and that's frustrating to me. And it's almost like we need a really cool shot here. And so they wait for the perfect light, but then when you immediately edit back to where the conversation took place and the lighting's different, it irritates me. I've seen some people complaining on Reddit, which I think is the point of Reddit, right? Is to complain. But anyway, I've seen some people complaining about the idea that the Minorians knew exactly where to go. They basically got off the ship and went directly to Ostirith. But then someone pointed out that Halbrand is pointing that to them before they leave, saying the survivors will go here. And that before he left, he saw orcs making their way to Ostirith. So it makes sense that that's where they would go first. I'm kind of cool with it. I didn't remember that. So at first I was kind of like, wait a minute, how do they know where to go? But then knowing that especially if you watch them back to back, that you would remember that, I think it works okay for me. The switcheroo on the hilt it's just kind of a bummer, because you would think that someone that handles this thing would have checked it to see if it was actually the hilt and not, just a regular axe, or hatchet, whatever you want to say. Is a little frustrating, but I get it. I get why they were doing it. It's one of those, it's kind of, it's in a lot of movies where it's just like, oh, there's this thing that happens that is, it's not great, but it happened. So as far as likes go, I think, at least from my perspective, I'm actually liking the Arondir Bronwyn romance kind of brewing here. I don't know. Maybe it's just because I'm a big softie or whatever, but I actually believe that a lot more than, say, a dwarf and an elf. Anyway, so yeah, I think it's okay. And I really, really like the idea of Adar being one of those original orcs. The first of its kind, really, right? I mean, he's literally one of the forefathers of all the orcs that we see. It's kind of cool, and I gotta say, it's something that's way beyond what Tolkien at least put down on paper, but I really like it. I think the direction in this episode just seemed so much more confident. It felt like a seasoned veteran helming this episode, and more than anything, I think the episode got me thinking, and it got me looking forward. It got me really thinking about what was going to happen next. And I got to say, no episode prior has gotten me to do that. It was more like, okay, now I got to sit down and talk about this. What am I going to say? Now here, I've got plenty to say. There's so much to sink your teeth into. The lighting of Mount Doom and basically transforming the Southlands into Mordor, the Mordor that we know. It's cool. It's a really, really neat idea. And of course, the flame of Udûn and stuff like that, some people were talking about, that maybe that's what they were talking about, is that the Balrog was going to open up. But Udûn actually means hell in Sindarin, I believe. So it's actually kind of just this thing, and it's actually a location in Mordor, of Udûn. So I'm in. Now, the big question I think that most people are asking is, who is Sauron actually? Like, have we already met Sauron? Or is it someone else? I'm going to go on record as saying that I think that Halbrand might be Sauron. And the reason I say that is because I love the idea of him being the fair person. Like he's someone who was able to convince people to do things totally against the original direction. He's a liar, and he's he has taken on this appearance. I like that idea. Now, it could go either way, right? Halbrand could end up being just a generic hero, and he ends up, dying at some, whatever. Or he could end up being a Witch King, which is one of the other big things, is that Halbrand might be a Witch King. We're saying that Theo was Sauron. Look, I don't know, but I really like the idea of Galadriel basically working hand in hand with Sauron to create Mordor without her knowledge. I think that's kind of cool. Also, I really like the idea of the Southlanders literally proclaiming him king, and I think that's really cool. And of course, Adar doesn't recognize him, because why would he? He's taking on a different form. And I don't know. I could be wrong, and that's fine if I am. But I really like that idea, and I'm trying not to get super cemented onto that, because if it turns out to be something different, it might disappoint me. But I gotta say, I think it's a cool idea. So look, you tell me, what are you thinking right now? Rings of Power, Udûn, I think even the haters could probably agree that this was the best episode so far. This is the one that had the most meat on the bones, right? And momentum. Just for flat out momentum, I think this one did it. But I'd love to know what you think. Let me know what you're thinking down below. We'll talk about it. So thank you all so much for watching, and we will see you on the next one.